Did you tweet the link out?
Yes, sir. We're live, by the way.
All right.
I tell you. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Sunday night. Unexpectedly, I wasn't necessarily planning to do a show this week, so obviously a lot going on with the departure of Tyler Santucci. Suddenly, on my sort of quasi day off on Saturday, Alex was at the basketball game, which was we'll get into that as well. And I was driving back from an event in Atlanta with my oldest son, and we've been hanging out with my best friend from high school, and who's like his uncle. And Chad gave me a heads up that he had the story, and like I was thought he was like just doing it to mess with me because he knew I was like doing something non-work related. Um, and he's like, no, it's real. So essentially, I'll give you guys some color on the Santucci situation. So Tyler, his deal was he had told Brent from the jump that he always wanted to work in the NFL. From when their initial conversations happened around, earlier than this time a year ago. So it would have been like end of December, early January last year. Tyler was the first guy I interviewed for the DC job, but one of many he interviewed. And uh, it was always sort of thought, and Brent's sort of thing was just like, hey, be loyal to us, in terms of college. But if you get that opportunity, that's something you can't turn down if that's like your dream gig. And it is for most coaches, to be honest with you, to be in the NFL. And then to get to work for John Harbaugh, who's somebody I've met and spent time with personally about 10 years ago. I got to like spend a day with him in Baltimore. Just amazing dude, really great guy, solid coach, and is stable. Him and Mike Tomlin have been as stable as you can be in the NFL in terms of their tenure and being there. So it's a great opportunity for him. And it's one of those things too, man. Like you can't begrudge somebody for moving up to the highest level of their profession, right? Like whatever it is you do, like if you work at, you know, like a regional airline and then Delta or whoever wants to hire you, like no one, no one at that regional is going to give you like a hard time about that, right? Like, um, it's just that like that opportunity to go be at the most elite level of something. So it makes a lot of sense why he jumped on the opportunity. And now Georgia Tech finds itself in the position of once again looking for a defensive coordinator. This would be what the third in 2 years, I guess technically, if you want to get into it, because Kevin Shearer did the interim last 2 year, yeah, whatever, a little over a year ago, when Thacker was demoted mid-season. Brent obviously kept Thacker along because he helped him get the job, and then it wasn't working out and made the move, and now he finds himself at square one. The one thing I'll tell you about Brett Key's process is it's been the same for every person he's hired, whether it was Tyler Santucci last year or Buster Faulkner 2 years ago. He will go through his process. He's not going to rush into hiring somebody. There's no like immediate sense of, hey, we got to do this or else. You could even push back your spring game or whatever if you're really that worried about like the time span of it. But I don't think that's an issue either. But at the end of the day, as long as you have someone in the next 3-4 weeks, like you're fine. Um, there's going to be kind of a wide net from what I've gathered. There's no favorites. There's no like, hey, this is the guy. There's none of that stuff. There wasn't last time either. He shot for the moon with some guys, and then Tyler was the guy who impressed him the most from the jump, and he ended up being the one that made the most sense. But he talked to pretty much every guy that I could think of that was, a top DC last time around. And as we're seeing, this is not usual Georgia Tech, right? Ohio State lost their offensive coordinator tonight to the Raiders. Like, there's a lot of poaching going on. There's a lot of guys going to the NFL from the college ranks. You had Tashard, who we all know, interviewing for the Cowboys running backs job, and then they just interviewed, was it the Oregon assistant, or it was like another college running backs coach today. My
Yeah,
buddy
I
Nick
saw that.
Harris, who covers them, he used to work for Rivals. Nick was our Texas guy, and he covers the Cowboys now, and he was tweeting about us on his thing. So this is super common, and just sort of the nature of the beast. And it always has been, man. If you have success, you're going to end up losing people and having to replace them. And the mark of a great coach is the ability to identify talent, build up that talent on your staff, and then bring those people into your program and replace them when they leave for something better, which ultimately happens. Whether that's, Buster taking a head coaching job next year or whatever the things are, like those are going to happen, and it's how you replace them that makes the difference. And that's the earmark of the guy that Brett has really patterned his program after, Nick Saban. That was what made him successful, was his ability to go find, Mike Loxley or Sark or Lane Kiffin or whoever, or whatever DC you want to pull out that he had. Over the years, from Kirby to Pete to whoever, and have success with those guys. And it's the same with a lot of other coaches, and you see it, uh, you know, wherever you look in sports where people are successful, even in the NFL level, right? Guys leave. From how many guys get interviewed at the from Super Bowl teams every year, right? Like that was part of Belichick's problem, was losing quality guys both in their front office and on their staff when he was with the Patriots. Like you have success and you got to replace them, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be an ongoing thing, and it's something we all got to get used to. I don't like it, I'm like those guys, big relationship guy like Tyler. Personally, I wasn't as close to him as I was, like, say, Thacker, who I knew for a really long time and still very friendly with. But like, you build relationships, you like these people, so it's a little different too on our end. Having those, both Russell and I had good relationships with, different people that have been fired or let go or whatever, or have left on their own or taken other jobs, and that's always kind of a weird element of this job too. So my expectation, just to lay that out there, is that they'll hire a DC and maintain the current staff as well. Brent really likes the staff he has. I think that it's going to be interesting to see whether he goes for an up and coming guy or he goes for an older guy to be the DC or something in between. I don't think any of that said. I think it's going to come down to how those interviews play out and all that. But I expect Jess Simpson to be the D line coach, Kyle Pope to coach the ends and outside linebackers, Corey Peebles to be the DB coach, and Kobe Jones to be the cornerbacks coach. They love Kobe Jones, by the way. Every kid I talked to this weekend that was at the junior day, we've talked to, I think, every single DB that was there and all the corners, and every one of them loves that kid. And what I was told about Kobe Jones is basically Brent maybe hired him like a year earlier than people probably thought he would be hired in this process. And he's like a stud guy, like is going to be a big time coach in college and is a big time recruiter already. And he basically kind of pushed him ahead of the pile a little bit to get a shot at that dude. So I think that's, really encouraging. There's a nice foundation there. You just got to find the right guy to manage all of it. So that's where it's at. Alex, you were having to deal with all this because I was literally in a car driving when it all happened. Kind of, what was your reaction? And also, you were sitting next to Chad as this all broke.
Yeah, he was sitting there next to me. It was about, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes left in the game yesterday, and Georgia Tech's trying to hold on for like the biggest win of their season, and yeah, the Santucci stuff breaks, and Chad's sitting there next to me tweeting tweeting about it. So, I mean, no, not ideal timing on our part, but like you said, like it's a good sign when people want your coaches. I would, as a program, as a Georgia Tech fan, you'd a whole lot rather be in this situation than, you know, having coaches fired and like that kind of turnover every year. Not having a successful program. So, I mean, Santucci did a really good job in his 1 year here, and he's very well thought of as a coach. And I can't remember who it was on our message board, but sometime today, somebody was talking about how much of like, I mean, obviously it's a stressful job to go to the NFL. It's the highest level, but you're also not like working, 12 months a year like you are with
No, there's an
college.
off season. You're not in
Yeah,
charge of finding your own players. That's
right.
the GM and the front office's part. So when you go home and it's not in the season, you're not working. Like these dudes work around the clock. Like I can tell you that. Like um just from having relationships with people, like, I was in where was I? I was at Notre Dame the other day and getting a text from somebody at like, oh, it was the Alex Mathis hire, right? Like the night before that all came out, I was in my hotel and I got a text from somebody, and they were kind of giving me a heads up so I could get something ready, and that it was going to come out on whatever day it was, Wednesday or third, whatever day that was after that game. And I was sitting in the hotel writing the story and all that, but it was like midnight or whatever, like on a weeknight. Like these people work like, you know, 20-hour days sometimes, like not a lot of sleep. And especially this last couple of weeks, because you were in your heavy recruiting period, so everyone's on the road, like you're out recruiting. You literally had what I think, from talking to somebody, they may have had like 4 days off after the bowl game before like the start of the new year, and that was it. Like there was no, because you had the portal thing that killed your entire offseason plus a bowl game, and then you went straight into that, into being on the road in January. And that's why these guys also get paid a lot of money. But if you're not working at Georgia Tech, if you're at you know West Georgia, I don't know how the hell you do this stuff. Like it's pretty thankless. So I think it's going to be Um, one of the guys in the chat just said for me to give my itinerary so we know when breaking news happens. I really thought like some stuff was going to go down when I was flying the other day, and sure enough, like it was that morning. It was before I flew out, but I have a trip. I'm going up to Virginia this weekend, so maybe there'll be some news there. And then in a couple weeks, I got a trip up to Massachusetts to visit family before that BC game. So maybe that's when the DC hire goes down. I think I'm flying out on the 19th, boys. So just pencil that in as the boys and girls. That's the day that something might happen. But yeah, it's funny, and I had no idea. Here's the other funny part about it. I like totally checked out on the basketball game, so I like looked at the halftime score. They were down 10 or whatever at the half, right, or 8.
They were 10, and then they lost a point because they took a three away.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I saw that. And so that was sort of the last point I checked in on the game, because at that point I was starting to talk to recruits with a little bit of free time I had, and I wasn't. So I was trying to focus, let Alex do that because I thought they would lose, and so I had no idea they won the basketball game until um, after I got back to the house, after I'd been posting about what happened with Santucci. I went back and looked to find, I think, like whatever Alex, or that's why I realized they won the basketball game. Or I went back through Twitter and I was like, whoa. I was like, that's cool.
They we'll get into it. They played their tails off in the second half. That's one you can kind of take pride in, because that was I tweeted like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes into the second half. I was like, man, the results may not be here, but like you can tell
They've
these
been
guys
playing hard, man, the last
they're
few
playing
games. Like,
hard, diving
yeah.
on the floor, playing defense. They're not halfway going through screens. They're not like quitting like some teams would when they're 3-7 in the league and everybody's injured and like whatever. And it's like I was like, man, they're playing hard. Hopefully, one of these games goes their way to like reinforce that some, and the rest of the game played out the way it was. But the other thing I was going to say on the Santucci thing, it's not exactly the best timing as far as college coaching search, because we've gone through the end of the season cycle, and all the moves. As far as though like calendar, it's probably not the worst time, because we're going in the dead period now in February. So like you said, there's no need to kind of rush it, because you've got 3 or 4 weeks where coaches are not really doing anything except preparing for spring football. So
And the truth of the matter was Santucci's primary role in recruiting was more of sort of focusing on his position group more so than even be in a couple of areas he was recruiting. But it wasn't as much about him being like some road dog. Like that's what Corey and Kobe Jones and those guys are on that defensive side of the ball. Kyle, I think Jess and Tooch were more like very focused on their specific position groups. So yeah, and the reality is your system is what your system is. They're not going to suddenly start running a 3-3-5 or something. And Brent's not going to do that. He's not going to blow up what they're doing for a new DC. So it's going to fall within the lines of kind of what they have going on. They really like some of the stuff that they like, the run game stuff they've put in, and some of the adjustments they've made there in that grouping. So I think, and it's a good situation to walk into if you're looking to hire DC. They've got talent, they've got some really good pieces, and you have a very good offense to go against that is able to possess the football. So I like kind of where they're at in terms of building this program up, and being able to make a hire here. Now it's a matter of finding the right guy, but no one was beating Tyler Santucci's door down a year ago either. So and the reality is too, man, like the bar's been pretty low here. Like, well, defensively, like it's been a long time since it's been consistently good. Last year, they showed real signs of getting there. And I think that's sort of the frustration, I think, from fans is that, yes, the offense has been pretty good the last 2 years, and they had a lot of great years with Paul, but like the defense hadn't been good since Tenuta. So, like, hoping for that turn in the corner. I think that's maybe where the sadness. But I thought fans handled this pretty well. It's hard to be upset about a guy going to the NFL.
I think somebody was asking about how important he was recruiting wise with some certain prospects. I don't think he had, like you said, he was like focused on his position group, which they didn't sign any linebackers.
But he wasn't even the primary in all those guys either.
Right,
Like
and I think he was more of like a guy to come in. He was kind of like a closer. I know he helped with Tay Harris at the end. He helped with some of the other bigger defensive guys, but he wasn't like their primary recruiter. He would but they all talked well about him too. Like
I would say he's like the setup man. Like
right.
and then Brant would be the closer. Like if you're using the now, so he's the Luke Jackson. I don't know who the Brave setup guy is, but
Luke
wasn't
Jackson.
he a few years ago like the setup man? Like
He was the closer like by necessity a couple years ago. And then they traded and got him back this year. Man, he was pretty bad. But
or whomever. When I was a kid, it would have been like what, like
AJ Minter's a
Mike
good
Stanton or something when I was a kid. Like
Mike Remlinger.
There you go. But like, yeah, the setup. So that's what the coordinators essentially do. Buster has an area he recruits. He recruits some positions, but really Nathan Brock recruits the tight ends, right? And is the tight ends coach. And Dylan Dockery coaches H-backs with Nate. Like Buster doesn't really have a position, so Buster focuses on kids that are live basically in the area where he lives, like over in Oconee and all that area. And then he has a few other spots he recruits, or like Winky has some areas, but that's just how their staff is set up. And then they, but typically the coordinators, and some schools don't even send them out on the road. So that's where it gets interesting too, because these days you don't have to. You can designate other people to go out on the road. So you could hire, you know, uh, the Ralph region of defense that's not Ralph's age, like whoever that is, like Don Brown, right? Like Don Brown, who got fired at UMass, who's in Michigan DC, who did a really good job. Don Brown's whatever he is, 70, I don't know, late 60s, 70 years old. You could go hire someone like that if you really wanted to, and then send out on the road Quentin Jones or whoever from the bench on the staff to go recruit. So that's also something else that you can do. You can designate someone else to be on the road. So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of different possibilities there. He's not going to go hire George O'Leary, but like there's a lot of, but yes, to answer TJ's question, I don't think, and it's GC3. It's not GC5, my man. GC3. I don't think Jeff's getting a call. I don't think Thac's getting a call. I don't think that Ted Roof will be getting a call to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech in this cycle.
What about Al Groh? Is he going to get another run at it?
I haven't seen it. Wasn't he? He was doing games for like the ACC network or something, wasn't he?
I think so.
ESPN. He was doing color. I think he did a Tech game a few years ago, maybe during COVID. I remember Ken and I talked about it and thought it was funny that he was doing the color for the game.
I mean,
Al was great to deal with. He just was.
He's got to be. I mean, he was pretty old when he was here, so he's got to be.
I think Al is one of those guys who looked older than he was. Like maybe like I don't know that he was like crazy old. I think he's just Oh, Al's 80, so he is old. Sorry.
I, I thought
You were right about that.
he was pretty up there, but I don't know. I mean, Key's got a ton of like you said, with when you work on a staff with Nick Saban, you win, as much as they did. They're going to go through coaches, and Key was there for a good bit of that, so he's got all kinds of connections. And I don't know that I mean, Saban went through several coordinators, Smart, Kirby, and Kevin Steele was there a couple times, and got Ole Miss now, Golding, and um, I don't know. He had a ton of them, so I'm sure a lot of connections were made with Key. I mean, Key was not on that side of the ball, but
So like Pete Golding's one of Brent's best friends. Like he knows Tosh Lapoy, who's a co-DC at Oregon. He knows tons of guys like that he worked with there. In a very specific manner. He can call Coach Saban and get advice from him. He could call, obviously O'Leary, and there's many other people that they're friends with. And a lot of the hires, so like Kobe Jones was coached by Don Hill Ely, who's like Brent's chief of staff basically, and like Corey Peoples recruited him, so that was like the connection there. Or like Mike Polly worked with Jeep and Buster at Middle Tennessee State, who they just brought in to replace Alan Mogridge as like one of the assistant O-line coaches. So a lot of times these come through tangential connections. Jess was hired before Santucci was, and it wasn't a foregone conclusion that Santucci was going to get the job, but didn't hurt that Jess and him had worked together at Duke, right? So you don't know, like, is that so? That's where people throw names out. I don't expect Jess Simpson to be the guy. He hasn't called defense. I don't think that's the direction Brent's going to go in. He's going to want to hire a guy who's called plays, especially in this tempo era. Like you can't. It's so hard to break a guy in at that level that you're playing at. You're playing Colorado week 1 and like Clemson week 3. You're not. That's not the time to break in a guy who's never called plays, in my opinion. And I would assume Brent, knowing him the way I do, would agree with that. There's a lot of guys. If you want to go in the Elko tree, there's Lyle Hemphill, who I knew at Wake Forest, who worked with Santucci. There's, but I don't know. None of these names have come up, and even the ones was it Rob Smith or like Coach Boogie or whoever. I don't think any of those guys are in play yet. I don't. Brett's very much at step 1 of the process, right? Like he's gotten like 1,000 texts since the news broke yesterday at 5 o'clock or whatever from people interested in the job. Last time around, I remember he told me he had like stacks of like faxes and emails and stuff of people interested in interviewing for the job when the DC job was open last year. People like what they're doing. It's gotten around in college football that Georgia Tech is invested in all of this and that they're invested in winning and that Brent's doing a good job. So I think that it's going to be a much more attractive job than it was a year ago, and the job was much more attractive a year ago than it was 2 years ago. And as you build on this, it should get more and more attractive. And the whole way this works, man, if whether you're Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or Ryan Day, who's going through this right now at Ohio State, or on a smaller level, Brent Key or what the hell is that guy's name? The guy at Minnesota, PJ Fleck. Like these guys all go through this, right? PJ Fleck lost his DC to Rutgers, I think it was. Like this stuff all happens. Penn State hires Ohio State's DC. The Penn State DC went to Clemson. Like, there's just all this stuff going on constantly, and the constant churn. Ohio State loses their guys to the NFL. Like, it is part of the business, and how you adapt to it is just as big as the portal and all the other stuff. And that's one thing I have a lot of confidence. Brent's done a nice job of hiring people. He's shown a good eye for it. I think he has his process down now for what he wants to do in terms of you going through the process and hiring. And part of it too, man, is he wants people. You're spending all day with these people, so he wants people that fit in. You don't want a bunch of jerks or a bunch of egomaniacs or people that are weird or whatever, like, because it makes for a bad vibe in the room.
You mentioned Nick Saban, so you want to get that rumor going.
Yeah, let's see. Nick Saban's going to come back. He's quitting game day, and he's going to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech.
I was.
I just want to coach ball, man. Like,
He don't want to deal with all the other stuff.
yeah, he's like, I'm not going to recruit.
I was assured by the conspiracy theorists on Twitter that he was coming back to be Clemson's DC for Dabo a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, you never know.
Oh, and that Dabo was going to leave Clemson to go to Alabama, and Kalen DeBoer was going to quit. And yeah, man, you never know. This is a weird business, man. Like, but people are, if you're at the high, it's like anything in life, right? Like, even on my small level as a small business owner, like I have to make decisions every day that impact people's lives, impact my life, but I have to do what's best for my businesses. And sometimes there's hard decisions, man. I've had to fire people. I've had people leave, like like Russell retiring from the business because it was wearing him out, like, and for his personal health, like stuff happens and you have to adapt. I was not prepared for that. He wasn't really either. It was sort of just something that happened. Like, and now Alex, who was working, at the newspaper, is like out of that grind. So like, it'll be interesting as far as, hot board and stuff. I've been reticent to like jump into that because really all the names I've thought of off the top of my head have already been shot down. And all the ones that the boards come up with have all been shot down by people I've talked to as just not being like in the mix right now. But again, things change and it's going to be a long process. I don't think it's going to take a couple weeks to play out. And so much for us having some downtime.
Kelly shot one of mine down immediately because of the NCAA issues. So.
Oh yeah, Alex asked me about Pruitt. Pruitt's on a show cause until 2029. So Jeremy Pruitt will not be. Jeremy Pruitt's another close friend of Brent, another guy that he will lean on for advice, I'm sure, when it comes time to vet some possible coaches and what you hear. Someone asked about Freddie Roach at Alabama. I don't think Freddie's called D either, has he? I don't know. He's been bypassed a lot of times there for when the jobs come open. And he's a D-line coach. That doesn't really make a lot of sense either. I think it'll be a linebacker or a back-end coach. They're not going to step on Jess Simpson.
Freddie Roach was he was a linebacker when he played. I don't. He's notorious from my Bama group of friends. They said he dropped more interceptions than any linebacker in the history of college football. So they always talk about
that's
Freddie
why he wasn't
Roach.
a tight end and he was a linebacker.
Yeah, I think he had like a club one year. He had one of those clubs on his hand, so that didn't help.
Yeah, Freddie's literally never been a defensive coordinator. I looked at, and he is a D-line coach. Maybe he was was he an outside backer at Bama back then? I don't even know.
I thought he was in the middle. I don't know.
I don't remember him. I'm sure I saw him play in college. But
he was. I think he was early to mid 2000s ish, if I remember correctly.
If we want to really get Alex, we can ask him about the Duke Carolina game. But
I didn't watch a single dribble of that. So
yeah, I called and gave you the good news, so you didn't have to watch the game. When it was when they were down like 30 in the first half, I was like, hey, you probably just go home and not watch this.
Honestly, the board will be thrilled to hear this, but I don't know if I've ever cared less about Carolina basketball.
About time, Alex. Time for you to convert, buddy.
I mean, with as bad as they've been, and this year, and just I don't know. I've got other stuff that I need to focus my energy on, and not that terrible North Carolina team with a. I don't know. I'm not saying anything about Hubert. I like the guy, but man, I don't know if he's going to survive this one. If they miss the tournament again, he might be out of here.
So Jeff's asking about T-Rob. I don't think T-Rob called the defense at South Carolina. That was where he was at DC, right? I thought Will called that, Muschamp. Muschamp, I don't think is looking. Someone asked about him in the chat. I don't know that he's looking for a job right now. He's been living in Nashville away from Georgia, taking care of some personal matters and being with his kids who are in school up there and his wife.
T-Rob was at Alabama though for a little while, right?
He just wasn't calling. It was Pete was calling it there. Pete Colin. Someone asked, do we think Key's next big thing is start getting players drafted every year? Yes. That is where you start to turn the corner, and that's sort of the next level of selling your program. Aside from money, right? Is that if you are getting guys drafted, that's what these kids ultimately want. At the end of the day, the highest level ones, anyways, they want to play in the NFL. So you need to be putting guys in the NFL and them having careers, sustained careers, not just a guy getting a UDFA deal for a year or being on the practice squad or whatever. But guys like physically playing. Right, there's two tech players in the Super Bowl, both late. EJ was probably UDFA, right?
Yeah, I think he was undrafted.
And then Harrison was what would be a third day pick now, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the sort of next big block to get things going.
I didn't see any of it, but apparently Jordan Williams played really well in his. He
Yeah, I
was
didn't watch it either.
he
The Senior
was.
Bowl
I
or
think
that
he
thing.
played in the one on Thursday. Him and Zeke.
Matthew
Josh
with the ticket here, baby. Josh Pastner, defense. Josh is too nice to work for Brent. That would not go well. Like Brent would eat him alive. They like each other, but he would eat him alive. That's Coach Boogie. I don't know that he is a candidate right now. He's the defensive coordinator at Southern Miss. Brent really likes him. He's like on what I would call like my BC list right now, like guys I'm monitoring, but I think he's probably aiming higher. Nah, that's not a shot. I like Jason a lot, but like I think he's looking for someone more established than that. Do you want to jump into the questions?
Yeah, I was looking at that one on the chat about Jordan Allen.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that one. Let me
I
see if I can
think the
find.
third from the bottom. Um,
Oh, you guys were right early on about Eric Singleton playing early. Keep hearing about how fast Jordan Allen is. Do you see him getting playing time freshman year? Yeah. So the guys that I'm sort of most monitoring. Let me pull up the. I don't want to speak out of turn here.
we've talked about him being he could contribute early in the return game if nothing else because he's.
Yeah, I think that's one of the expectations for him. On the offensive side, guys could play early. I heard Josh Petty's put on almost 20 pounds already at Georgia Tech.
He looked bigger in that Polynesian
Like
Bowl.
he's in the 270 range now, which is a big step up for him. They're excited about him. Excited about Kevin P. Jordan Allen is a guy who I could see, yeah, like you said, in the return game, or even helping with some of the stuff that like a Singleton or whoever did in terms of some of those motion plays, maybe to take some of that pressure off of Malik Rutherford. Bailey, I think with all of his gifts, maybe I'm curious if that's part of his game or not. We haven't seen enough of him to do that. The guy who's sort of my dark horse in all this, man, is Shane Marshall. Like they're really big on Shane Marshall. He won't be here until the summer, but they think that dude's a stud. Him and JP, they really think they hit it hard in the running back class in the cycle. And Shane almost ended up at Georgia too. He was that was a big move being able to hold on to him.
That's what I was going to say about Jordan Allen too. He's not an early enrollee. He's the one that told me he wanted to win some state track medals before he graduated. So, I mean, the guys that are going through spring, and they signed those three receivers out of the portal. They feel pretty good about. So, they're deep. They're very deep at receiver. So we'll see. There's going to be a lot of competition at that spot. Let's see what we got. We didn't have a whole ton of questions. The first one was about Santucci being the lead recruiter on any of the recruits or transfers that came in. We kind of talked about that.
With Melvin Gordon or Melvin Jordan. Why do I do that, man? I don't know why I call him Melvin Gordon. Melvin Jordan, the kid from Oregon State, and then he was the main one that talked a lot about Tooch. And as a linebacker, obviously that's where that would have some impact. They didn't sign any high school linebackers in the cycle. I don't think he was the primary on anybody either in the class. So, in terms of the high school kids. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, in this day and age, this is all business, man. Like, and you'll see guys be like, "Wow," same thing. I mean, I had the same reaction that, like, I guess Christian Garrett and some of the other guys, Tay Harrison. Literally, if you saw I retweeted Chad and was just like, "Whoa." Like that was pretty much what those kids were doing too, because it was a surprise. And people assume that means somebody's leaving. It doesn't. What it means is they're surprised. Like sometimes, and they just want to express their surprise. Like don't read too much into it. Um. Oh, the portal wide receivers. Yeah, they're there. Um. Gatling, Rivers, and
Patterson.
Patterson. Yeah, they're already enrolled.
Yep. Here's a basketball question. There were some bigger names that Georgia Tech was linked to in the portal, but Duncan Powell is having a better year than a lot of guys. Just talk about how big of a pickup Duncan Powell has been. I mean,
Yeah, he's it was interesting because it was like so out of left field. He wasn't even like a guy we were tracking. It was a guy that I would have to go back and look at whatever I wrote at the time. I've got like the backstory on him after he committed. But essentially, he was committed to so the thing that people forget about Duncan Powell is Duncan Powell is like a 4-star like Rivals 100 guy out of high school and going into his senior year. He was committed to Arkansas for like 6 months, and then he blew out his knee, and Musselman dropped him. I think it was Musselman, and I mean he messed his knee up bad, like bad, bad. He said it took him like 2 years, like to really sort of come back. So he went to I think it was North Carolina A&T maybe, and was playing there, and then he transferred out west. And so he was a guy that was like he was a national recruit level talent guy. He just took a long time to come back from his knee. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can continue to build on it and be consistent. But he was people think because of where he came from, he wasn't a high level player. He was just a guy who got hurt in high school, and it derailed his career. And he said to me, he was like, "Look, I didn't think I was going to play basketball again for a while, like at one point." And so he's like, "I'm really loving this like moment to be like the six man, which is what Damon kind of wants from him to be the energizer bunny off the bench, for them to when things aren't going well, you put him in, he sparks it and gets after it. And he ends up playing like starter minutes.
he
Um,
uh, he didn't play. I mean, he didn't shoot the ball well in the first half yesterday, but um, I think Damon talked about it in his press conference. He switched him onto Chucky Hepburn and like put a body like a bigger body on him. That was a pretty big turning point in the game. I think I think Hepburn only had like 4 points in the second half. So um, and I think Powell ended up in double figures again. So he just kind of plugs along and gets his minutes and puts
he
up
gives you good
stats.
energy too, like and good mojo, and
He was slapping.
he's having a good time.
He was high fiving the fans after the game. Like he's that kind of player. Like you can tell he like it means a lot to him to be out there. Like you said, what he's been through with injury and everything. So and he's getting a chance. And like first of the year, he wasn't playing a whole lot. And then by necessity and just by him like just plugging along, he got his opportunity and he's taking advantage of it. So um, yeah, he's been a pretty important piece the last few weeks when they've not had a whole lot of pieces to move around. But let's see. There's a question about the DC position again. Is it harder with all the with most of the positions filled with the cycle done? Um, I mean, we kind of talked about that. It's not ideal timing college wise, but like
It never is though. I mean, like no one expects to make changes. The reality is this is all going to be in flux until the middle of February because it goes through the Super Bowl, because there's going to be still some moves in the NFL around the Super Bowl, and some hirings, and then sort of the end of staff people getting hired, and all that sort of has a domino down because people get pulled up to the NFL from the college level, and then that creates openings and all that stuff. So I just think it's par for the course now. I mean, didn't the BC coach leave for like a position coach job in the NFL? I don't think Halfley got a DC job. I think he was just a
Yeah, he
assistant
was.
coach.
He was. Yeah, he was DC for the Packers this year.
Oh, was he the DC? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
But
he
I mean, you
left.
have guys leaving a head coaching job and it's trickling down, right? Like Alabama's two DCs last year were two guys who were head coaches in the G5. It was the Buffalo head coach and the head coach at
South
Troy,
Alabama.
South Alabama, Kane Womack, Dave's son. So like, it's weird time, man. Like, it is very different than it was when you wouldn't see like Irk Russell leave to go to Georgia Southern or whatever. Like things that happened, like those are going to be less common. Some of those moves. You will still see some guys like the Brian Bohannons of the world take their chances, or like you saw Del McGee go to Georgia State from Georgia or whatever. There'll be some of that, but there won't be as many like coordinator type guys doing those moves. Like, so it is weird.
I wonder what Dale has to say about Tyler Santucci getting that job in the NFL. Um, there's another question about basketball about the boot brigade, as they call them. What do you expect
Did you
Reeves or
say they
O'Brien?
were all out?
Yeah, they're
Out?
all out of the boots now. And I mean, Reeves was kind of halfway taking part in pregame stuff. O'Brien and Mustaf weren't, so there's
He
probably
was
still.
at the whatever Notre Dame game. He was like fetching balls for people and stuff, like
He,
in their warm ups.
yeah, so I mean, I don't. I mean, you still got to ramp back up. Like you can't just go from doing nothing to being right back on the court. So they'll still be. I don't know. I don't have any kind of time frame, but it's not going to be like they're not going to play this week. I wouldn't think.
Shout out to
Um,
David who just texted me, Mr. Croy, that it was the Mercer game in 2016 that Al Groh returned to the flats to be the analyst for. So that's the answer to that question. Appreciate it, man.
will the DC ever be allowed to play prevent defense? Is one of the other questions on the bottom of that. So
um, yeah, it's funny because like so many people were pissed at like Santucci after the Vanderbilt game too. And now, like, it's like one of those things I always tell people, man, this stuff kind of goes around in circles. Ryan in the chat is correct. This is an interesting point to see what the market's going. He says it's interesting to see how the market reacts to DC opening and how attractive the job is to the league and interest the team gets. Here's what I'll tell you. I can't, like, I've been sworn to some secrecy and some, like, two things, but like one of the names that I did stumble upon is like a sitting P5 DC that is interested in the job. Like it's or P4, sorry. Like somebody with a real job making real money. Like not like some guy out of college in his first DC job. So there's people interested in now whether that guy goes anywhere, Brent likes him or anything, that's like so far out of this point of and what we're talking about at this point because Brent hasn't even interviewed anybody yet. Because this literally all just went down Saturday, and he's at sort of the square one. But like, yeah, there's people interested in the job, so like, just hang tight. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see what he does. And it's think about it this way too, man. Like, how many of you guys were excited about Buster Faulkner when Georgia Tech hired him? There were like 3 or 4 people on the board that sort of knew who he was, and that was about it, right? Like. And it's interesting because many of the other guys who interviewed more than once for the job, like Buster did, ended up taking other jobs. One of them became the OC at Mississippi State. One of them was, I think, the OC at Virginia Tech or Virginia, one of those two. And all those guys have been fired. And they all had sort of better, or North Carolina, sorry, is the guy that was the last OC at North Carolina, Chip Lindsey. Like, And those guys seem maybe like on paper like a better hire than Buster Faulkner, but Brent sort of trusted his instincts there. And
I think more of the Georgia Tech folks were excited about Buster Faulkner because he came from the mighty Georgia and chose Georgia Tech to leave Georgia, and I don't know that.
Chose to stay at Georgia Tech all this time too.
That's right. I know it.
Despite the internet telling me over and over again he was leaving to go to another job, or he's going to go to Georgia, or he's going to Kentucky, or he's going to whatever job.
I don't know that 680 The Fan radio host is.
But Blue said he turned down Georgia.
Oh man!
As he gets like excommunicated by like Kirby Smart for whatever craziness he said on the radio.
Wow.
They didn't have they practices were rough back in the day. He was probably live in practice, so Buck might have taken a lot of hits back in the day.
Yeah, I think Buck's more plugged in with the Braves than he is with Georgia football now. It's about where he is in his career, I think. But there's a question about are there any current players on the defense side of the ball that could bail with Santucci exit? Well, the spring portal is after spring football, so who knows what's going to happen? But I don't think people are just going to start leaving in the middle of spring semester.
Ken's in here saying he was one of the guys that was all about Buster. Cool. I didn't know really Buster's story all that much, and at first he was like really a super long shot for the job. I can tell you from the conversations I had with people around the program at the time, and then he just kept grinding and selling his vision to Brent, and we all didn't think it was going to be him, and then it ended up being him. So, maybe there'll be a guy like that this time around that really wants the job that's somewhere. Steve's asking about junior days. Yeah, we got a bunch of updates on the site. The previous one had more maybe like a current star power. It's harder to gauge that right now because we're just entering camp season. Like the first couple of camps are coming up this month. And then the rankings will shift a lot between now and the summertime when the OVs start. But yeah, there's been some pretty big time kids, and they had this last one was more like a lot of secondary guys, and some pretty talented ones at that. And I've written a lot of stories about and a lot of updates on the site. You can go check those out. But there's some pretty talented dudes that were there. The week before that, they had a really good group of linemen for the first junior day, right?
Yeah, we had more of the beef last week with the offense and defensive lineman. Dre Quinn was there yesterday. I assume he was there. He was on our list, and I think he had announced he was going to be there. But yeah, we've
there were like 40 kids or so. And I think the previous one was like that as well. There's a few. There's probably more than that. There are like 40 like legit guys that are like recruiting right now. And as far as who they're trending with, and from the first one, Chad Fairchild, the linebacker, everyone kind of expects him to be the first commit from the class. Some people are kind of split on him a little bit. I haven't watched him enough to have like the opinion about that yet. But he's very talented. Who else do they have? In the first one, like I'm trying to think of who the big time guys were. Braden Rouse.
they had the
Who was the other? There were two other. Oh, Forkba. DJ
Forkba,
and
then Gamble, the linebacker.
From yeah.
And up front, they had the Houston kid, I think.
CJ Gamble.
Yeah, they had Graham Houston from Buford. That's a pretty big offensive line recruit. They had a couple other. The Smith kid that our board was talking about.
It was funny because there were a couple other kids like Cameron Brown, the corner, and he like went to Mississippi State and like committed there Saturday for reasons unknown to me. There's been a lot of weird stuff that's gone on. Uh-oh, Alex, you in trouble, buddy?
No, that's something in the background. Um, let's see
Yeah,
here.
yeah, it's interesting.
There's a question about us not getting a commitment yet. One of the last ACC teams without a commitment.
Charles, there's been a couple questions about this. Hang on. So Nebraska not doing their spring game. I think it's kind of lame. I understand it intellectually, but I still think it's kind of lame. Guys are going to leave either way, but obviously we all witnessed the Akilo Stone saga a few years ago, where he was like Mr. Spring, defensive lineman of the spring or whatever, and like an Ole Miss guy saw that and like went and like lured. Sorry, an Ole Miss person reached out to him after he entered the portal and got him to come to Oxford, and then proceeded to kind of only play him a few. He played like backup minutes there.
I mean, the tampering's happening. I don't think canceling a spring game's gonna
No, because here's the thing, man. Like everybody talks in these buildings, right? Like that's the reality. Like if somebody's doing well, it's going to get out there, and you have kids come through and all the other things. And really, who gets you the most probably is like the high school coaches, because they all like gab like teenage girls to each other about stuff. So like they're gonna see, whomever like killing it in practice, or hear from a coach like, hey, so and so is doing well. Shameik Jones is killing it, and then that's gonna get around, and then people are gonna be like, ooh, Shameik Jones, he didn't play. Let me blah 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 blah.
It gets around. I mean, it's a time where the NCAA's got to figure something out. I mean, it's just going to keep happening until
you gotta have contracts or something binding.
Yeah.
I think really the reality is you probably need something similar to baseball, where like you have a 3-year initial commitment somewhere, and after that you're able to move around if you want to. Sort of like baseball with how the draft works. Sorry, I didn't explain that well. Hold on, Alex.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, let's take a minute here and talk about it, friends. It's Section 103, baby. Our sponsors for the JOL Overreaction Sundays and other stuff. Appreciate Section 103, best GT gear. Alex, tell them about your Section 103 hat.
It's a great hat. I'm wearing it again tonight. Comfortable. It's durable. It's going to last a long time, I believe, which I need for my hat collection with my bald head the way it is.
Protect yourself from the sun when you're at these camps, man.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I got a couple of them. The Coach Key hoodie was a nice Christmas present for a couple of family members. So yeah, good, great stuff. So good
here's
stuff
my question: will we see Bill Belichick rocking the? Will he rock the hoodie at Carolina, or will he dress like more appropriately?
He did sign his contract eventually.
Yeah, he did eventually sign after he found out no NFL teams were going to hire him.
That's right. That's right.
It's like certain former Georgia Tech football coach who's currently unemployed might get hired at like a FCS school and wait to sign his contract until the ink's dry, and he makes sure no one else is going to take a flyer on him.
Yeah, he's holding out for that big job.
I thought Belichick was going to keep him around, man.
I'm sure they would get along well.
Yeah.
There's a question about us not having a commitment yet. I think you've talked about that.
I talked about it a lot. Brent's not big on forcing these kids to jump through hoops, like to commit, and then you got to strangle to hold on to them. The commit rate, the positive keeping of commitment rate is not great, or the earlier it is.
I mean, the kid that I went to see from North Cobb, that big offensive lineman for 2026, Brandon Anderson.
Brandon Anderson, yeah.
He committed to Tennessee on a visit in like November, and he's already decommitted.
We all thought it was stupid when he committed. Like Alex and I literally were like text each other, like, why did that kid commit? Like, what is he doing? Because you get excited, and they're he's whatever he is, 16, 17 years old. He got excited on a visit, or he got fired up about the school or whatever in the moment. And then you commit, and then you're like, what did I do? Think about all of us. Like, were you making the best decisions in life when you were 16, 15, 17? As someone who's a parent of a teenager right now, I can tell you the answer to that is no.
Absolutely.
So it is what it is, man. Like, and I really like Brandon Anderson, great kid. He's a good dude, but like, I've enjoyed. I got to meet him and talk to him quite a bit at a couple of different events. That reminds me, I need to add him to off. Left him off my offer thing because I forgot to
Yeah.
put him back on.
I think he's still on the board. Last question on here was about basketball. It's talking about where does basketball rank nationally with games missed due to injury, and then with the Dorian situation. I don't know. I hadn't paid attention close to a whole lot of teams, but I couldn't imagine very many other teams missing this many
I
minutes
know
from
Louisville
guys.
has a bunch of guys hurt. I don't know the specifics of where those. And then that's the other thing, right? Like the specifics of your injuries, right? If it was certain players on this team, it wouldn't be as big a deal as it is with others.
I mean,
Yeah, it sucks to lose people.
Carolina's been healthy and they've been bad, so
Carolina's been very disappointing.
so
Old what's his name's seat's getting hot. All right, somebody asked about Eric Rivers taking the top off the defense. He's expected to step up. Can he do that? Yeah, I mean, catching the ball deep is part of the thing too, right? Like, and so you got to be able to run and you got to be able to catch it and execute those plays. And Eric was a little inconsistent there. Some of it were throws, some of it was ability to adjust to the ball or underthrows because guys were banged up or whatever it was. But I'm pulling up like his receiving depth because I'm kind of curious about that. I mean, he graded his highest grades were on deep balls at FIU, between the numbers on the outside left. And 5 of the ones in the center were touchdowns. There were 6. 5 were touchdowns. 1 was PI. And then he was 6 of 16 on the outside. The hardest NFL throw, the deep left ball, with a right-handed quarterback. 2 touchdowns, a lot of yardage. The numbers certainly back up that he's fast. I don't have track speeds on him or whatever. But watching his film, he looks fast enough to me. You don't need if you have technique and you can get off a defender and break a jam, or like just other guys are guarding you 1-on-1 and you can beat a guy, then you don't have to be Eric Singleton fast to be a vertical threat.
I mean, FIU must have slung it around a good bit. I didn't see a whole lot of their games with the numbers that Rivers and Patterson put up last year. So
I think their problem was the defense was bad. But yeah, their coach got fired. Their coach is now Mike McIntyre just got hired by somebody to be like a analyst or something like that. He was the head coach there. Where is he now? Oh, Mississippi State. He's like on the bench at Mississippi State, Mike McIntyre. Former Georgia Tech offensive lineman, I think, or offensive player. Joe the Pilot says Jameson Williams is his comparison to Eric Singleton, to Eric Rivers. Got to remember, that's going to be a fun one when they start playing Eric Rivers, Eric Singleton. I feel like that's going to be another one of those old man things for me.
well, I called Eric Singleton Chris Singleton several times this year. So
I keep calling Melvin Jordan Melvin Gordon. Yeah, I am excited to see kind of what's next year, man. I think that somebody told me Brent Key's motto is "Born to Work," so we'll certainly see that on display here, and I think that it's interesting. The basketball team's showing some signs of life now. You got baseball starting up. They're picked 10th. I think they'll be better than 10th. We'll find out. It'd be pretty disappointing with the team they have if they're 10th. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a fun spring in the flats. The winter should be ending fairly soon, and things will warm up, and we'll have some football practice and a new defense coordinator, probably a couple of like QAs or whatever on defense that are new, and I don't know.
We got a signing day on Wednesday. I'll be at our new kickers signing at East Paulding on Wednesday, so have coverage of that. We got I'll be at the Under Armour Combine next Sunday. I'm
Did
sure there'll be.
Puxatawny Phil hit his whatever?
He saw his shadow, so what does that mean? Spring or winter? I don't.
Well, it's funny. I saw a graphic that was like all the different. There's like Binghamton Phil and whatever. Like there's other places that have their groundhog that pops out or whatever. And it was like a chart of like 10 of the biggest ones. And all of them said that Puxatawny Phil is like the worst of like the 10 big ones that all do it. He has like he's right 30% of the time or something, 33%. And
It
like
sounds
there's
like my
another one.
gambling picks.
There's like Staten Island Paul or something, and he's like, like 70% or something. I should find that. It was very funny. I was just kind of laughing to myself.
30%. That's like I did in ACC Pick'em this past year. So
Yeah, the bar is low for Alex. We're gonna do opposites on him. Though I talked a buddy out of betting on Georgia Tech Notre Dame the other night. He wanted to take, I think Notre Dame was like 10-point favorite maybe in the game. I was like, no, 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 don't like touch the game. And then they obviously covered. They didn't win, but well, yeah. Joe the Pilot's talking about the baseball team needing pitching. So I've been covering Georgia Tech for 15 years or whatever. They had one season where they had pitching, and then what's his name got hurt, the lefty. And they were that year they played Auburn in the regional, and lost here to Auburn on a game-winning home run. Dude hung a slider or something out of the bullpen. But yeah, that was like the one year they had any pitching depth, and then like their best starter went down, and it's been so bad. Like just the inconsistency with the program and getting over that hump and keeping pitchers healthy. So cross your fingers for Danny. Danny's a good dude. I hope they win. It'd be nice one of my goals is to go to Omaha one of these years, man. Like to go cover a College World Series. I've never done it.
I've always said I've never been there. That's one place I always want to go for a College World Series. Omaha would be pretty awesome. So I'm gonna be covering some baseball this spring. So maybe they'll snap the super regional absence streak in my first year covering baseball. So
there you go. Hopefully it's the opposite of women's basketball, where the best player got hurt and then they were undefeated and started losing games.
So 15-0 to 15-4 or 16-4 very quickly. They got a big win today at Miami. They played well. They gave up a few points to Carson Beck's girlfriend, but other than that, they played well. In the second half, really, they shot the ball a lot better. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there and what happens with baseball. The women's tournament's coming up in a couple of weeks too. The ACC tournament, I think it's in Greensboro. So big opportunity for the Lady Jackets there. Play for some seeding in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, that's still going on. And then sometime in March, I think spring football kicks off, and we'll get going. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I would like to go to Omaha, and Alex would like to go. So chances are we won't go.
it's been a while for the Jackets, so I don't know. Maybe they're due.
Did they go like maybe the first year? I don't remember. Like before I started covering the team, I don't even know.
They went mid 2000s. I remember.
06 is the last time I remember them, I think, being really good, or 08. That was before me. So, hold on, I'll tell you. When was it? Oh, it was 06. They went to the College World Series. So I remember that because I was covering Georgia at the time. And then came here, and that's when the funk started a couple years after that. I just got stuck. And they were cooking in the COVID season, and it went down. So I don't know. I hope they get out of it. It would be nice. It'd be good for Danny to get another shot too. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna run. Alex will get into some baseball this week. We're still kind of wrapping up junior days. Obviously, the Santucci news threw us a little bit of a curveball this week. Appreciate everyone for joining us. Tell your friends about Jackets Online. Your home for Georgia Tech sports news, commentary, crazy people.
Always expecting the worst.
Chicken sandwich reviews, all those things, funny gifs, whatever you like. We have it on Jackets Online. Thanks to Alex for joining me tonight. Appreciate everybody, and we will see you soon. Thank you.